Before the Vegas Golden Knights, before hockey in general, I grew up watching one sport. No, not that one. Or that one. That one, yeah, a little bit, but there was one that I was clearly obsessed with. This video is my love letter to NASCAR. I know what some of you are saying. NASCAR is not a sport. How hard is it to turn left? To those, imagine being in the loops of a roller coaster, but instead of 2 to 3 minutes, it's for 3 hours, 400 to 600 miles in ridiculous heat. Some crashes can go under G-forces stronger than the Apollo 16 did re-entering the atmosphere. Carl Edwards would win and did a backflip, and Mark Martin looked like this at the age of 50. And yeah, there's also the Tony Stewarts and Ryan Newmans of the field, not exactly models of peak physical fitness, but no one is arguing that O-linemen aren't some of the toughest out there on the field in football, so. And just look at what Stewart had to go through.
Here's why. Here's the 4 got into the back of Ward Burton, I believe.
And then Burton's 22 got into Stewart.
And
everybody scrambles.
That car is taking a whale of a ride, that 20 car is.
And Newman as well.
Trouble off
Trouble, big trouble.
Newman slams the wall. Down comes Schrader, and Newman is in the air and over. Ryan Newman, last year's Rookie of the Year. The rear end ripped.
F1 and IndyCar require a finesse, and sure, they go faster and experience more of those G-forces, also making more right turns, sure, but in NASCAR, beating and banging is welcomed by everyone except the guy that you're doing it to.
Don't wreck.
They touch.
They're sliding. They're banging.
Larson. It's going to be a drag race. They touch.
Kind of like how hitting and fighting is in hockey compared to, well...
By the hips and he's rolling through the tackle.
Tom Brady, while he's in pursuit, so he's spinning around too. There's no intent to hurt the quarterback right there.
I don't know where the love of fast cars came from, but it's all I've ever known. When I was 3 days old, my grandpa, then 35, don't worry, don't do math there, put me in front of the TV to watch my first NASCAR race. I guess you could say I was born a NASCAR fan. In fact, I learned my numbers and colors based on the cars in the field, and to this day, my family swears that my first words were "Jeffy sucks," in reference to NASCAR legend Jeff Gordon. It's still insane to me that he's technically a legend now, which, I mean, how old am I? Ironic then that the first favorite driver I had was none other than Jeff Gordon. I think I went as him for Halloween 3 years in a row, like 3 to 6. Why does he suck though, according to the rest of my family? Well, my grandpa's favorite driver was Darrell Waltrip, then Bobby Labonte, and then it's moved from there as well after Bobby retired. My grandma's favorite driver was Rusty Wallace, my mom's favorite driver was Dale Jr., and my dad's driver was Dale Jarrett. My grandma's sister's driver was Jeff Gordon, and again, according to my family, she brainwashed me into liking him. Plus, everyone loves a winner, especially small, impressionable children. Obviously, most of my family didn't agree with that sentiment, but core memories that resonate in my brain include watching every race at my grandparents' house, racing the hundreds of diecasts that I had, matching them up according to the running order throughout the race, and then creating my own races throughout the rest of the week. Into high school, but that's besides the point. I vividly remember the 2001 Daytona 500 and the heartbreaking week after that. I remember my favorite driver, Jeff Gordon, wrecking early despite having the pole position in the 2001 Chevrolet Monte Carlo 400 at Richmond in this beautiful Looney Tunes scheme, and then getting teased so bad by my family that I ended up crying and sobbing. I was 5. In fact, I think I had just turned 5, it was September. And my son is now older than I was when that happened, and yeah, no, that's understandable that I freaked out. I went to races at Las Vegas Motor Speedway growing up, from the lowest NASCAR series and the Truck Series, up to the then Busch Series, which is kind of like the AHL in hockey terms, and then Cup Series. I was then influenced into my favorite driver becoming Ryan Newman in the 2004 season, you know, after he had his series leading 8-win season and never got his career back to that point again after that, but you know, I was promised by my family that when I turned 10, I could go to the Daytona 500, the Super Bowl of NASCAR in Daytona Beach, Florida. Also, the first race of the season, which no other sport does that, so that's cool. Looking back, that's kind of insane that they took me to that. I remember having a red-eye flight at the age of 10 and going to Walmart when we got there, and just having a full-on complete breakdown in the middle of Walmart in the aisle for shoes, because I had forgot my own walking shoes and we needed to get some for me so I could walk the track and be fine. And I think it was because I just couldn't decide on a pair of shoes, and my family was all wanting me to just pick one, and I just couldn't do that, which says a lot about some of the things that I still struggle with now. But it was a ton of fun. I was able to see the best race. I didn't know it at the time, but I was at what is widely regarded by many as one of the best Daytona 500s of all time. And I left upset. Back on the backstretch grandstands when they still existed, I cheered for my driver, Ryan Newman, every single lap. Even after he had mechanical issues and had to go to the garage, and I didn't know that because I didn't have a scanner or anything. Side note, Daytona is frickin' huge. 2.5 mile track, it's like insane. There was actually a nice couple that was next to us that turned to me. I think they were Jamie McMurray fans when he drove the 26. And the tickets were actually their dad's or whatever, and he couldn't come, but he was a big Ryan Newman fan. And so they said that I had brought them a little, like he was there with them watching the race because of me cheering for his driver every single lap. Even after he went to the garage, and they made a point of saying that, and I, you know, that it was a nice moment. To understand the other reason why I was upset, I have to kind of talk about some of the downsides of NASCAR, including just the inconsistency in officiating, which in every sport you complain about officiating, right? But like thinking about it now, the way that they called it was fantastic, but the season before they had really cracked down hard on when an incident happened, the field was frozen, and they would call it as soon as the incident would happen, and whoever was up in front, if it was the last lap, would win. Racing back to the line despite a giant wreck going on behind them is definitely the way that they need to do it, as long as everyone can be safe in doing so. And it was coming to the checkered. It's not like it was like they have another lap or whatever, but the incident started when perennial bridesmaid Mark Martin had his nose in front of Kevin Harvick. And so Mark Martin, who like we all cheered for as that, you know, old veteran of the sport, hadn't won a Daytona 500 yet and never got to, because what happened was they let them race back to the line, and Kevin Harvick nudged him back after fighting back for that spot, side drafting him to oblivion.
Kevin Harvick wins the Daytona 500. We got one car on his roof coming across the start finish line.
They're wrecking everywhere.
I was convinced, along with my grandparents, that Mark Martin should have been declared the winner of that race. But thinking back on it now, I'm glad that Harvick won.
They literally just ruled the opposite thing last night. It's so inconsistent.
I continue to be obsessed.
Logging probably literally thousands of hours of gameplay into all of these games on the PlayStation 2 from 2004 through 2009.
NASCAR 2006, Total Team Control.
Obviously, there's the widely regarded GOAT of console NASCAR games, NASCAR Thunder 2004, but 2005 had this fantastic cutscene that isn't the cover driver of the game, but they still had it. And then 2006, you could swap to teammates, and I would spend hours trying to get all of my team into the 1, 2, 3, up to 5 finish. It was a lot. And these games intensified my love for the sport, which helped me to stay interested and led to other highlight moments like me
getting to see my driver win the big one literally the year after I went there, which that's funny. I had said, like, if I had known that the 50th running of the Daytona 500, if I had known that was that year, I would have waited a year, but it's fine, it's whatever. We were in Arizona visiting my aunt and watching the Daytona 500, and I remember bawling my eyes out when Newman crossed that line in first on the last lap to win the 50th Daytona 500. Favorite drivers within my family changed as old favorites retired. I continued hating certain drivers for different reasons. I vividly remember Carl Edwards flipping instead of backwards, upwards into the catch fence at Talladega. Did happen to be on the hood of my favorite driver at the time's car, but you know. And then he got out of his car and ran across the finish line. And even though that technically didn't count, it was still one of the coolest moments for NASCAR and Carl Edwards' career.
You know how he is. He's an athlete, a marathon runner. I want to finish the race.
And he did,
yes,
to
he
a
did.
standing ovation from the crowd. Shades of Ricky Bobby.
But like about any childhood obsession really, I kind of grew out of it a little bit in high school. And then I moved to Canada for a bit, where NASCAR outside of in the lower division and used to be annual race in Montreal, which is not where I was living. It is completely irrelevant. Hockey became my love, and when I was moving back to Vegas, Vegas was getting a team, and so I lived with my grandparents for a bit again after I came back from Canada, and the Daytona 500 was happening, so of course I watched that, and I would watch the odd race every now and again, but other than like highlights and barely keeping up with what was going on in the season, it was mostly out of my brain. Really since 2012, and that might be because Jimmy just kept frickin' winning all the time, but then I had a kid. Obviously he loved hockey because of me, and no, I'm not pushing it per se, but like, you know, it being always on kind of helps, right? Also, Disney is a thing. And Cars was one of my favorite childhood movies.
Speed. I am Speed.
Because it was actually very close to, like, it felt like a NASCAR movie, despite not being, you know. And it was his favorite movie for a bit. And so it brought out the nostalgia in me, and so we watched it a lot. I will never forget, though, he was about 2.5 at the time, and we were visiting my grandparents, and my grandpa had all these toys from when the movie had originally come out that he gave to Logan, a Lightning McQueen little toy car. And the moment he saw it, that his face of just like, I recognize this person, the Lightning McQueen. And I swear it was in his hand all the time after that, like for months straight. He just carried it with him everywhere. It became his favorite toy, and it was the first time he really had a favorite toy. After that, I would throw on the odd race every now and again, because I had kept some of, like 40-ish of my diecast that I planned to like have my kids have, and he would just play with them every now and again, and I would show him old races that had the diecast that I had kept from my childhood in them, and he would be like, oh, like they're the same, and then he would like playing with them, you know? Ironically enough, that's also how he learned numbers bigger than 10, was by looking at these and his colors, was by looking at the cars and seeing the numbers and being like, oh, the same way that I had 25 years earlier. And slowly over time, I would start talking more and more about the races with my grandparents, and it was a way that I could connect with them. And I needed to watch the race in order to have that conversation. So I started watching more of them with my son to talk to him, but also so I could talk with my grandparents a little bit more. I was past having like a favorite driver really, or manufacturer or whatever, but I loved some of these like highlight moments that happened over the next couple of years. Like this Battle of the Brothers.
What does Jones do here if these two get together?
Coming out of turn 4. Kurt Busch with the advantage. Kyle Busch slides. Kurt Busch will win.
What a finish!
And this video game
Watch
move.
this. Just watch.
That is not.
Folks,
that
that's
is
not sped up. That is not sped up. That is actual time. It looks as though it is sped up.
All of this culminating to now, where just a year ago I had this opportunity because we are in Georgia to take my son to his first NASCAR race, Saturday doubleheader with the trucks and the now called Xfinity Series, the AHL one. He was 4, so like how much is he actually gonna watch? Is it worth, like his ticket was free, I think? So we just had to pay for mine to get in, and it was great. Here's the thing that I'm learning about children, is that I have taken Logan and Oakley to numerous different like college games, basketball, football, volleyball, then this race for Logan. And every single time, like they lose focus, they get interested in other things because they have short attention spans, right? But then we come home, and the next time that we have a game on the TV, they instantly connect with it. They're like, oh, we saw this. We saw them do this earlier against a different opponent. And they are just that much more engaged with it. And they start spewing off memories of things that you didn't even think that they like caught at all, that are just fantastic because they just like being included in these things, right? And the same thing happened with the races. There were times where he would watch like qualifying and stuff that happened where they're trying to set the fastest time to see who can start up front, right? And he then, like the races, he would be engaged a little bit, but then we brought a couple of cars that he played with on the bench behind him with his back to the track for a decent portion of the race. And then there were times where there was kids right behind us that he would play with that, like, not looking at the race at all. And it was an all-day thing, and he loved doing the stuff at the track, and so that exhausted him as well, and it was a bunch of walking. And for a 4-year-old, that's a lot. And because it was a doubleheader, it meant that we were there basically all day, and he was exhausted at the end. But you know, I wasn't sure if he liked it or not. It was his Christmas present, and you know, I was just like, okay, was that for me? Was that for him? But the very next day, it was all he could talk about. And the Cup Series race happened, and it was all he could keep talking about was the things that he'd seen and that was a part of the day before. And he just kept telling his mom and his sister, like, oh, it was so awesome. And that was cool.
Plus, there are no words that I can use to explain how much better it is to go to a race in person and feeling that sound go through your body every lap when they pass you by.
And when we watched the Cup race the next day at home, oh, he was definitely engaged. And what a race and finish to be engaged with.
Suarez right alongside him, 3 wide, off turn 4. Here they come to the flag, 3 abreast, photo finish.
A 3-wide finish straight out of Cars in that first race in the movie.
There is Griffin coming, it's too close to call. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Since then, we've watched most of the races. We've talked to my grandparents almost every Sunday after the race and talked about who won and the different things that have happened. And much to my wife and my wallet's chagrin, the number of die casts and toy cars in our family has just increased a bit with, you know, the drivers that are driving now. Every week, seeing him, when the race gets on, pull his cars out and put them in a lineup based on what's going on TV and then making his own race. Like, it's a picture perfect recreation of me from 25 years ago and what I used to do with the exact same thing. And this is without me showing him that I did it. He just naturally, like, that was what he was doing. And we're going back to Atlanta Motor Speedway in June for the night race with my grandfather, and that's gonna be awesome. Why now? Like, it's a break, but it's mid-season of the NHL, and why am I making this video about NASCAR now? Well, one, it's my channel, I can do whatever I want. Also, the idea behind this is more so like, there's a couple of videos that I'm making that are more so for history, telling my kids where this comes from and why it's a thing for me and my family. Also, the Daytona 500 happens to be this week, so it's on my mind. It's not the same as from when I was a child, obviously. And I have many gripes with NASCAR, including the playoff format and some of the officiating still, and sponsorships and paint schemes, which isn't totally their fault, but the politics that are within the sport. But as much as those things kind of bother me, that's not just isolated with NASCAR. The politics and stuff and officiating and all that jazz is through every league and every sport. The NHL, the Department of Player Safety, for example, inconsistent to all heck. But I still have an undeniable fondness for NASCAR. How it's connecting me now to the past, to the present, and to the future within my kids. So in the words of DW, boogity boogity boogity, let's go racing.
Three, two,